Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and a very special welcome to Theresa French, all the way from Minnesota. How are you, my friend?
I'm fantastic. I'm glad to be here and honored to be with you on the podcast and talk about the thing I love most, which is sales and selling. So good to be here.
Love it. So Theresa, you wear a couple of hats in your world, but what we're going to talk about today is the hat you wear, which is the CEO and sales trainer and coach at SellMark. And we're going to talk all things sales. We're going to talk feedback. We may even talk role plays.
Yay!
Personal development.
Everyone's favorite, right?
Well, it is. It's actually interesting how many sales leaders refuse to do role plays. I think, we know what we're doing. I've been in sales for 20 plus years. I know how to have a conversation with a customer. And then they practice in front of their customer.
Oh my gosh, yes. That's exactly, yes. I have oftentimes wondered why that is the place we practice when everything's at stake and everything's there to lose, and yet we'll try this out, or worse, I'll try it. I don't know if it worked. All I know is I didn't get the contract, right?
Yes.
And there's no feedback there to know where to go right when you went left. Yeah, practicing when there's a client in front of you is not the place to be practicing.
No. So we might delve into that in a bit of detail today. Before we jump in, I'm looking forward to this conversation. For the people listening, love to invite you just to give a bit of background in terms of your career. I always like to get a bit of background because it's really interesting for me to understand how people end up doing what they currently do today, because many people have different divergent paths, and it's really interesting to see was there a specific moment that led you down this path, or was it a culmination of a number of things? So what's your background?
Probably a little bit of both. I'll start at a very young age. At age 9, I learned the power of being able to sell and write your own paycheck. So I'm a daughter of a single mom at the time, found this outfit at the mall that I had to have. Mom couldn't afford it. She said, "You're going to have to earn some money." So I went home and I fought and I stewed about it, and I was mad, of course. So that fueled a little bit too. But I decided I'm going to go door to door in a 4-block radius and walk dogs for that summer. And there off I went, knocking on every door I could get somebody to answer. And I ended up earning, I don't know, it was about $2,000 for the summer walking dogs. Wow. And the biggest at a 9-year-old, yes.
9-year-old.
I was very
wow.
My dad is an entrepreneur and salesperson, so it's in my DNA. I can't help it. This was the first time it actually manifested into something tangible like money. And I got the outfit, by the way.
Yeah, nice.
But the biggest lesson for selling that I learned during that time is qualify your lead. Make sure that they have a dog before you ask to walk it. So it was a lot of fun, and I learned great lessons. From there, professionally, I went to college, of course, ended up landing in a marketing course that had a sales track on it. And I just loved it. And that's really where I fell in love with role playing, to be honest with you. I had to sell a fake tanning solution, and I really learned what that all felt like. It didn't feel comfortable at first, but it was great. And then I cut my chops in Yellow Pages. For those of you who are familiar with the old fashioned book, really great sales training, worked with them both in an internal and external position. And I was hooked on sales from there, and ended up, really, that's where I launched my consulting career, because as I sat with each entrepreneur, each business of every size, of every industry, from all walks of life, I could only offer one product, but I saw in my conversations and my discovery how much I could help them in all sorts of areas. So I broke out on my own and said, I'm going to work with entrepreneurs and what I adoringly call my non-traditional salespeople. These are the people who never intended to get into sales, but they found themselves smack dab in the need of it to get their business off the ground. So that's who I specialize in. I have worked with tech SaaS. I have worked with a lot of different industries, but seems I keep falling back into the solopreneur world of selling. So that's kind of where I started and where I'm staying, by the way.
And why is it that what is it that attracts you to that marketplace rather than the big? I mean, you mentioned there you've been in SaaS as well, but what is it about the solopreneur, the businesses, maybe the startups or the entrepreneurial type phase that attracts you to that marketplace?
So first of all, it's all B2B. So they're selling to businesses. I kind of call it B2B2C because
Mm,
obviously they're a single. However, I saw the greatest need there. Traditional sales training doesn't tend to extend to some of these folks who are in business for themselves. They're left to learn from some of the, with all due respect, online gurus that teach some pretty slick bro selling kind of stuff that is not appropriate for working in corporate. It's not if you are a consultant who wants to work with a Fortune 100, Fortune 1000 company, bro selling is not going to get you in the door. So you have got
hey,
to have
bro.
you've got to have skills that are rooted in what I call my serve and solve method, where you are serving a need and solving a problem. And I find that this market, these solopreneurs, are the most afraid of this part of their job. So
Yeah.
they can market, they can post blog posts, they can do all sorts of crazy stuff, but this sales thing is daunting. And so I've just found a way to really make it friendly and fun and lucrative, financially lucrative. So yeah, and again, I'm one for the underdog. So who isn't being served, let me at them.
So just on that, and there might be people listening to this who may in fact be in a corporate,
Mhm.
but the corporate is quite entrepreneurial and they are
Yeah.
literally left to their own devices to create pipeline and do all their things. What is it that you found? Because I, having dealt with a few entrepreneurs myself who are founders who've created a product, they're very, very passionate about their product. Their product is almost their baby, right?
Yes.
And when they go out to the marketplace and have conversations, which is like what I call the discovery sort of phase, if they
Yep.
ever get rejected, it's almost like they're rejecting their baby because they're saying, "Well, your baby's ugly." What
Yes. Yes.
do you find that's one of the biggest challenges for those guys to get, I guess, get over the hump and have the conversations?
100%. You nailed it on the head. This is their baby. And if you think about someone who's selling intangible services such as leadership development or DEI, or someone who's selling software and a new program or some sort of new device, this was culminated from their own intelligence, their own baby, like you said. And it is a part of them. It is a part of who they are. And so when there's this chance that they get rejected or turned down or not accepted, it feels like a personal blow to
Mm,
themselves. And this is where mindset has to come in. And we've talked a little bit about personal development in the sales process, being able to fortify yourself to separate yourself from that which you create and that which you are, and
mm,
being able to see the difference and understand that when you talk to a prospect, number one, they're not rejecting you. They're actually rejecting the change they're going to have to go through in order to solve the problem that they decided to talk to you about.
yeah.
So this actually has way less to do with you as a salesperson and everything to do with the client. And
Mm,
you also touched on something a moment ago, that we're so passionate to talk about our thing that oftentimes we do exactly that, and we shortcut helping the prospect make a buying decision to buy the thing. And so meeting them where they are and understanding, what are you doing, what do you need, what's most pervasive, what's most urgent, and really getting under some of the face value comments they give you, being able to have that discovery conversation in a meaningful way, so you are attaching your thing, whatever it is, to their needs so they see the value.
mm,
So we can talk about our thing, but if we don't truly understand the value that it brings, you're going to miss almost every time. So really separating that and understanding where is the value to
mm,
them, and forget about yourself because
yeah.
it's not about you.
Yeah. And it's easy to say, not as easy to do when you're in the heat of the battle, when you have a
Yes.
product that you believe in, when you think that rightly or wrongly, everybody in the marketplace could benefit from that product.
Yep.
And unfortunately, what happens from a mindset perspective is often we'll then lead with that product, not lead with a possible solution to a problem, or even before that, lead with, do you have a problem? So it's similar to you as a 8, 9-year-old knocking on doors and saying, hey, I'm a dog walker, can I walk your dog? And they say, no, thanks, not interested, don't have a dog. Oh, but I'm a great dog walker. And not actually listening to say, oh, there's no need there, so don't, just move on. And that's not
Right.
rejection. That's just,
Right.
there's no need.
Well, unfortunately, so do you want to get a dog? Do you need it? Would you like to get a dog? If you ever get a dog, I'm your girl. Like, call me in. So I think there's a thought process that I've deployed over my entire sales career to understand that just because I have initiated a conversation doesn't mean that the person is ready to buy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean when they say no that they're never going to buy.
Yeah.
We have to take a middle of the road approach to this and understand that fortunes really are in the follow up.
Mm.
So if you have a conversation and you don't get where you need to get with that particular conversation, it ain't over, y'all. It is, I tell my clients there are three outcomes. Yes, which we win, we get the
Yeah.
business and we're super happy about that. We have no, which is not now. It's nothing more than just not now, or I don't understand the value, or it's not urgent enough for me. There's all sorts of other reasons besides your product sucks and I don't want it. Or number three, restraining order. The restraining order is the only time you stop. You do not stop unless they say, never talk to me again, go die, go jump off a cliff. But they don't ever say that. They say yes or they say no, which means we're still in the game.
Yeah.
We still have a chance. Now, the other thing, just because I'm talking about yeses, I'll touch on this real quick. Yes also doesn't mean that it's over. Because when you get a yes, you have a new client, which now expanding on that deal, expanding on that relationship, upselling, cross-selling, referrals, you are not done with it. Just because you won the first one doesn't
Mm.
mean you're done. So having this kind of perpetual infinity mindset where you are constantly looking at, okay, it didn't happen right now. What's the next step? What's the next step? And that's what I teach is really, we get so far. It doesn't mean we're done. What's the next step? What's the
Yeah.
next logical step to move it forward?
Yeah.
And sometimes that step is your own mindset, by the way. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's just reframing, wait a minute, where did things go off the rails? Why do I think looking at the game tape? You
Yeah.
got to look at the game tape.
Yeah.
What happened here? And what do I need to refine and then work on that? So no is never an answer. If you choose it for it not to be an answer.
Because what you're ultimately looking for is you want to get to the point where it's a restraining order. It's saying, no way, stop bothering me.
No restraining orders. If you're warranting a lot of restraining orders, you might want to look at your approach.
Yeah.
However, I have yet to have a client tell me never contact me again. It's usually not now. We don't have budget. Something happened. The need just isn't great enough yet. The pain hasn't been great enough, or I didn't help them see the pain in that conversation.
Mm.
I didn't go deep enough with them to illuminate what's really going on.
Yeah.
Sometimes we phone in some sales conversations. We don't hit all the marks. So
Yeah.
this is a constant iterative process. And if you're not dedicated to really getting better, you won't.
Yeah. Which then brings us to like the balance between the sales strategy and personal development. So in the work that you do with entrepreneurs and salespeople, how much do you focus on obviously having to have a sales process and some robustness around that? But if you were to allocate, I guess, percentages of priorities, is it more important to have a really robust, trustworthy, replicable sort of sales process, or, and it might be both, or more focus on the personal development side that through that personal development, you can actually make a lot more progress that the sales process may not necessarily help you with?
I'm going to say it's probably 60-40. 40% systems, processes, actions.
Yeah.
60% mindset, action set, skill set. So when we talk about personal development, we're talking about it from in the terms of what do I know that I'm doing that's right, and what do I know that isn't effective and I need to improve on. If you don't have a list of things you need to improve on, you're sunk, because even after 27 years of selling, there's things I get off of calls going, dang it, I got to go back to basics. I'm taking this for granted, or I assume too much. And again, I have to look at my own game tape. I have to face that mistake when I go back and watch it. And that is not easy. So if you don't have the willingness to do that, if you think you've got it all on lock, even if you've got a 50, 60% closing ratio, guess what? You can be better. And just imagine the revenue that you can generate at 70 and 80% closing ratio.
Yeah.
So I think it's really, really important my dad gave me the best advice I ever received ever. Never, ever, ever feel you have arrived. And that came by way of a card at graduation. My dad did not believe in college, by the way. He
Okay.
did not want me going to college, and he came to my college graduation party, not my ceremony, but to my party. And he leaves a blank card, like it had flowers on the front. It wasn't. He didn't even bother going to get a graduation card. It was just this blank flowery card, and his handwriting that said, "Never, ever, ever feel you have arrived, Dad." Not I'm proud of you. Not $5. Nothing. Just a piece of advice. And I was so mad at 21 years old, 22 years old.
Yeah.
I wanted to spit. Yet it is the piece of advice that has driven everything that I've done since then. Because if I feel I have arrived, I'm done. I'm
Mm,
done. I'm it's over. So lifelong learning and understanding different approaches, even understanding and studying human behavior, human psychology. You benefit from that, but you also benefit from the standpoint of your clients, your
mm,
prospects, understanding how they think. You can anticipate things more effectively. You can be more nimble in your conversations. You can remove some of the blame, like we were talking a moment ago, taking it personally.
mm.
When you know how people operate, you can say, "Oh, that's just them. That's their stuff. That's not me," which motivates you to keep going and find new ways of avenues in, because
Yeah.
there's an avenue in. You just might not find it as quickly as you thought you were going to. So,
Yeah.
personal development and mindset around just resilience. Like, you're going to dial a lot of numbers, and you're going to send out a lot of emails, and you're going to have a lot of conversations. Very small percentage are going to close.
Yeah.
So you've got to have something that fires you up, that keeps you going through that process. For me, it's the absolute mission based mindset that I have around solving issues.
Hmm.
I know what I solve, and I'm on mission to solve them. And it is very unfair of me to hold back the solutions that these businesses desperately need. I tell my clients all the time, if you had the cure to cancer, would you stop at anything to get it in their hands? No, of course not.
No.
Well, they do have cancer. They have leaky P&Ls. They have low performing teams. They have whatever's going on in their organization. That is their cancer.
Yeah.
And if you're not on mission to solve it, they're going to die on the table. So, do you want them to die on your watch? Is the question. So, I get a little dramatic with this because I'm pretty passionate about it.
No, but it's when you think about that, it's true. And a lot of people listening to this might think, oh, that's a bit extreme. But when you think
Right.
about it, it's the very fabric of a business that could be in jeopardy, that sometimes the CEO, the directors, the entrepreneur, the owner doesn't necessarily see it, and they're just pushing and pushing and pushing and hoping through that pushing it's going to change, and they're sort of wishing that that's going to change. But wishing is not really a strategy, as in hope's not strategy, but you've got to have hope anyway that tomorrow is going to be better. But you have to
That's right.
marry that up with strategy and direction. So to have somebody to come in and say, you know what, I can help you, but what you're saying is, in terms of never arriving, you're never then attaching yourself to the outcome that I need to get a yes from that person. I'll keep actually sharing the possible solutions or talking to them about the problem. It's going to be up to them as to whether they're ready
That's
and
right.
willing and able to want to solve that problem. And if they are, then I'll be the first person they're going to think about.
That's right.
Bit of
A portion of all sales comes, I hear from my clients all the time, referrals are so much easier. Yeah, because they're half sold. They've already decided their level of awareness is different. They know they have a problem and they're seeking a solution.
mm,
Those two make a great referral. Those are easier. They're not a slam dunk. You still have to do your job and walk through the paces, but they are a little bit easier. Then there's this education route where they may kind of sense they have some problems or maybe some symptoms, but they have no idea how to fix it, or if they're going to fix it, or if they need to fix it. So sometimes coming in and having a conversation and being candid in that
mm,
conversation and saying, "Look, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that?" You, as a salesperson, we have to constantly have a cause and effect thinking in our own mind to bring the client along in that conversation, because they may not be looking at the glaring consequences. We, as service providers, we've served hundreds, if not thousands, and tens of thousands of clients with our solution. We've
mm,
seen the success, we've seen the failures, we know what can go wrong. We know it so well, and they don't. This is their
yeah,
first time in the seat. So they don't have the crystal ball. We do. And so oftentimes it's about talking about what can happen if you don't do anything,
Mm.
and what can happen when we work together,
Yeah.
when we get this solved, when you buy my software and you free up this time, or when you buy my services and your team is operating better. Here's what you can stand to gain, and here's what you stand to gain in eliminating the loss. So
Yeah.
what you're going to gain by eliminating the fork in the neck and the bleeding neck, but you're also going to get the aspirational outcome of whatever you're working towards.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
being willing to have those candid conversations. I say to my clients all the time, if your prospect says, I've never thought about it that way, that's an interesting question, I don't know, those are really good indications that you've taken them to a place that's really important,
Yeah.
and they need to be thinking about it, and they hadn't before they met you.
Yeah.
So a lot of trust earned there.
And that puts you front of mind whether they end up moving forward and deciding to move forward and solve the problem or not. If they do, you're going to be front of mind. If they don't, you're the one they're going to be thinking about over time, and it might be going across their head and thinking, oh, what if should I, could I, hey, Theresa, can you help us?
That's right. That's right. I mean, when I talk to CEOs, the one thing that they tell me they want is, give me new ideas. Give me things I haven't heard about before. Give
Mm.
me new approaches, new strategies. I don't want the worn out things I can look up online. I don't need the last three pitches I've heard had this, and this. Give me something new. And
Yeah.
so when you can be novel and new and come up with deeper problems or different problems, different nuances of those problems, and really educate them on what's possible, that's when you really start building the sales relationship through that conversation.
And that's about developing your own unique value proposition. And what I get from that is it doesn't have to be anything that has never been done before, because it
Right.
may still be fundamental, but what it does is, because you're different, you might have a slightly different perspective. It sounds more unique in the eyes and the ears of the prospect or the
That's
CEO.
right. That's
And
right.
so I was gonna ask you then, based on the work that you do, how much of the challenges that you're solving, when you look at it, are pretty much fundamental.
They're all fundamental. They're, so two things happen.
You're saying
We,
this is
we
not rocket science?
I'm saying this is not rocket. Let me go on record to say this is not rocket science. There is an art to it, however, but it is not rocket science. Every client, every prospect wants to believe they're a special snowflake, that only they have these problems, only they're suffering from this. And even when you say, I've dealt with 16,000 clients before, you go, I know, but I'm different. They want to be different. So let them be different. Let them be different, and let them tell you all the differences that they have, because you'll hear the same story in your head that you've heard every other time. But I think also salespeople, especially founders of new products,
Mm.
founders who are selling in an environment, they have come about this solution because there was something special that they knew they needed to fix. There
Yeah.
was something about, whether they worked for a corporation, they were in a situation, this tool needs to be made, and this is going to be so different. And it is different, but it's not one of a kind. And so we still have to, and the only way we can tie that uniqueness is to tie it to the needs that the client thinks they have. And when new meets new, guess what? We win.
Yeah.
So, if whatever uniqueness you have to their uniqueness, everything becomes proprietary to the ear, and everyone feels good. But
Yeah.
what people don't want is same solutions they've heard a million times, because either they've already worked through something and it didn't work, or they've heard about it not working, or they've decided they just don't want to change. I mean, that's also
Mm.
a reality in the whole
Yeah.
process. But
Yeah.
typically, if you in packaging, so a lot of the work I do with my clients too is packaging and pricing. What do I charge? How do I offer? What do we do? And in that packaging, I always tell them, it's not a mastermind. So that's a term that a lot of people use.
Yeah.
It's a peer council, or
Mm.
it's a founders club.
Mm.
It has a proprietary name that the buyer can't hear and have a meaning to it.
Yeah.
They can't immediately make a judgment about
Yeah.
it. So being proprietary in so this is going to sound silly, but I have I have a metaphor, M&M metaphor. So just Darren, what's your favorite peanut M&M? What color?
Peanut M&M.
Peanut M&M
Uh,
or M&M. You like
yellow.
M&Ms, just M&M.
Yellow.
Yellow? Okay, so I'm going to get a bag because I know you like yellow. I've asked all the questions in my discovery. If I send you a gift, I'm sending you yellow M&Ms. Now, does that change the chocolate on the inside? Does that change the taste at all between a yellow and a green? Of
No.
course it doesn't. But I put a nice, pretty candy coating on the outside that you like, that makes it different, that makes it unique, and makes it special for you. So
Yeah.
when we talk about our products and services, we've got to put a candy coating on the outside. It doesn't mean the meat or whatever's on the inside needs to change. It
Mm.
just means to the ear, to the prospect, they're hearing something new and different that's sexy and alluring, and they're more interested, so they lean in. So how can you package your services, your products in a way that has that candy coating, which this is all about go-to-market strategy. This is about
Yeah.
voice of customer, understanding what do they want, what do they like, what do they appeal to, what do they appeal to? And if you know that and you've done your research, you can hit those unique needs every
Mm.
time.
Yeah. Which sounds, when you talk about that, it sounds like a lot of work, and it is, but it's work that still has to be done if you want to be relevant in the marketplace.
That's
And
right.
you said something before in relation to the sale, and I'm a firm believer that once you've sold something into an organization, that's just the starting point. And I often say to sales teams, your sale actually doesn't start until after the sale is made, because there are a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people out there looking for the sale, but then once they've made the sale, they think, well, that's done. Next sale, right? It's
Right. Right.
you've got to put that you've got to put that effort in and start thinking about what makes you unique. So you want them to keep talking about you and keep coming back to you. So it has to be unique. So
That's
it
right.
might take a bit of work, but it's going to be worth it, is what we're saying.
It's going to be worth it. Lifetime value is worth far more than the single sale that you make on the front end. And looking at that relationship over time, remember this is now a leveraged customer. They have friends, they have colleagues. They're going to refer you. You've got
Mm.
referrals to be made, you've got future business to be made, and really making sure that they feel taken care of, that the delivery of whatever you've just sold has them wanting more is really the key. And
Mm.
not every organization is poised to do that. I mean, some organizations have customer success managers, some don't. If you're a solo, you're it. You've
Yeah.
got to make sure that they're feeling served.
Yeah.
And sometimes just the delivery isn't enough. And so again, going back to the personal development a little bit and understanding human desire and human reward and rewards is a really critical piece as a part of delivery. Understanding that they want to be recognized, they want to be seen, heard, understood. And if we can give that to them in the service of our product, we're
Mm.
going to win long term, not just short term.
Mm. It's such an important point, which leads me to your methodology.
Yeah.
Excuse me, you got two we'll talk about, and part of this we want to weave in feedback as well. Um, Tell us a little bit about the serve and solve sales method, because it's interesting that it's serving and solving. It is not sales, the sales method.
That's right. That's right. That is 100% intentional. So at the top of our call here, obviously I talked about the reluctance that a lot of my solo clients and new founders have in selling. They don't want to come across sleazy or slimy. They don't want to come across like the used car salesperson. And 90% of that impression that they have was built because they got sold to wrong at some
Yeah.
point. Somebody pushed something down their throat, or they got on a call with a high pressure guru for some online high ticket program that made them feel guilty and shamed them, and just all of the tricks of the trade that go on that I can't believe are still happening, but they
Yeah.
are. And so a lot of my clients, even the word sales or selling is scary. And
Mm.
so I had to find a way, again, to make it fun and to make it comfortable and organic and authentic. So I thought, really at the core, what are we doing? We're not selling, we are serving them
Mm.
in the conversation, in the discovery conversation, as well as once we earn the business.
Mm.
Because much of what we've been talking about so far is illuminating things, gaps, issues, insights that prospect may not yet be thinking about, that even our presence in mentioning it is a value to them.
Yeah.
And so we're serving their best interest. And I always tell my clients, have a client best interest approach first. That's where you need to lean in, is the idea that I have your best interest at heart. And when I do that, I'm going to cover my butt. I'm going to be able to have my best interest covered because I took the time to care about yours. And so if we're trying to sell something to somebody
Yeah.
when they don't really have a need or they don't have the urgency, but we need the sale, that's where we go wrong. That's not a serving mentality. That's again bro
Hmm.
selling.
Well,
But
unfortunately, that happens a lot still. Let's go and
it
retrofit
does.
our. Hey, don't you understand, Theresa? I have the best product on the marketplace. So I'm going to try and retrofit this because you're a live customer. Because my
That's right.
manager is at me in my ear all the time. You need close, 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 close.
And how can you not want this? Are you an idiot? Are you really serious that you don't want this? Everyone else wants it. Why don't you want it?
Are you saying you don't belong?
I think, yeah. So we have to serve in the conversation. We have to serve when we deliver. And then what we're really doing, we're not really selling, although there's a transaction that takes place. There is an exchange of value for money,
Yeah.
absolutely, or else nobody gets paid. But we're solving the problem that we hope always returns a 10 times, a 5 times return for the person we're serving,
Mm.
right? We're not, this is an investment in a solution. It isn't a sale. So now we know, because I used to say to my clients, you like when the cash register rings, right? You like the money hitting the bank. That's called a sale, right?
Yes.
That's in and of itself. But if you don't like the process of selling, let's make it a little more friendly. So serve and solve is really where we landed. And it makes a lot of sense, especially in the service industry, if we're
Mm.
offering a service or a tangible product that provides service to a client. And again, we're about solving problems,
Yeah.
right? And in the process, we're going to get paid to do so.
Yeah.
And that's a fair, equitable arrangement. And there should be no shame and no reluctance and no slimy feeling from that, because you, as an expert, don't you want to be paid for your expertise? You've invested a lot in what you're doing. You've got school, you've got classes, you've got things you've done, you've gone to conferences, you've gotten extra training, you've hired coaches,
Mm.
whatever it is to build you up to the level of expertise you have right now. Isn't that worth getting paid on?
Yeah.
I think it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I guess the personal development, which you mentioned around 60% versus the 40% sales process is such an important aspect because certainly as an entrepreneur or a person selling their services or their wares or their products, if you have a mentality that I'm here to serve and I'm here to solve a problem and I'm here, I don't know, and my attitude will be, I don't know whether the product or the service that I have is going to solve your problem. So I'm
Hmm.
not even going to begin to talk about that until I understand and recognize, and you more importantly understand and recognize that there's a problem that needs to be solved.
That's right.
And only then will I actually share a solution to you and with you. And so,
And that's part of that best interest. We have to dive deep enough that we understand that there is actually a problem,
yeah.
and that we know thoroughly what the real problem is, and they've said to us, yes, this is the problem.
Mm,
Without their agreement, we won't talk them into anything.
mm.
We're not in the convincing business. Yes, some clients can be convinced, but those are typically not long-term sales. Those don't lead to lifetime value. They
No.
at some point wake up and go, why did I buy this? What did I do this for?
Yeah.
This is not working out. And then we lose it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And so with that, how do you then weave in the feedback? Because I know that we've talked before we press record, the importance of feedback, and particularly in sales, not wanting to practice or or wing it in front of customers. When you're thinking about serving and solving and having the mentality, how important is the process of feedback through the process as the salesperson, as the entrepreneur, as the owner is building the muscle and developing not just competence, but also confidence?
critical, like life-saving level critical. And I say that because it's one of the areas that in sales training industry at large, it's one of the things that it's the least talked about and the least improved. There's all sorts of books on formulas and frameworks and all the questions listed on a page, and you get scripts that you can read, and you all of the things. When the rubber hits the road and you as a whether you're a business owner or a salesperson in an organization, when you get on a call with that client and you have to execute on that script, things don't go right. You have no idea why. You just
Mm.
know you didn't win. And so then you get on the next call and you try something different. It doesn't work, but you're not really sure why. You just try it again and again and again, and you lose sale after sale. And every once in a while, you hit one, you get one through across the finish line, and you're like, yeah, something worked, but we still don't know what. We can't replicate it. We can't repeat it. We don't
Yep.
have that feedback mechanism. So one of the things I deployed really early in my coaching was call debriefs, looking at game tape, play by play, and really looking into the nuances of the human conversation. So there's the framework. Here's all
Yep.
your questions, but how did they respond? What was their body language?
Mm.
What was the intonation of their voice? What were they slow to answer or fast to answer? Like what's there's all sorts of human dynamics that you can read in these
Mm.
conversations if you're looking. But if you're not paying attention and all you're doing is going question to question to question, you're missing the gold that sells. You're
Yep.
missing things that prospect, if you were just to go 2 questions deeper on one response, would have won you the deal.
Yep.
Because you would have uncovered new information that you didn't have, and you would have been able to now remember we said new to new, bring my
Mm.
proprietary solution to their proprietary problem. Now
Yep.
we just got to something that's really proprietary and deep and maybe even intimate and private, but they
Yep.
divulged it to you. Guess what? Now we can talk about how this will relate to that. Now
Mm.
it's very personal for them. But
Yep.
if we don't go deep enough, if we don't ask those second and third level questions, we miss out on all the gold. So it's really, really important. And so when we talk about feedback, this is listening to the call with a coach, i.e., me, and we go play by play and we say, when he said this, it would have been better to go right than left. You could
Yep.
have asked this instead.
Yep.
With that response, that sounds a little pithy, sounds a little light, like maybe he was still protecting himself. Let's plan to dive in a little deeper next time when you get these one word answers. I
Mm-hmm.
just had a client today. He was in a proposal conversation, and the client, he's going through the alignment, he's going through the objectives, and gets into what he's going to offer. And at each juncture, like I've asked him, get the yes.
Yep.
Did I capture everything? Yes. Here's the objectives. Does that sound right? Yes. Here's what we want. Yes. I said, dude, red flag. He is not engaged. He is
No,
not
he's
asking
not.
questions. I'm like, and you just kept going. And he's like, well, yeah, I had everything. He was agreeing with me. No, he wasn't. He was giving you the answer he thought you wanted. So again, reading the room,
Yep.
understanding that those yeses don't actually mean yeses. And if they do mean yeses, it means I understand it, but I'm not maybe necessarily bought in yet. So things like that we catch, having been in the industry as long as we are, and honestly, the sales conversation is really what I have decided is my specialty. I'm kind of like a sales conversation whisperer. I have the process is a hello to hell yes. It's everything in between, from the original hello to the closed contract on the backside and all of the nuances in between. So really focusing on that part of it. And this is going to be industry proofed, because AI will never be able to replace a
Mm.
sales conversation. Well,
Mm.
okay, I won't say never. I won't go on record with never, because we don't know where AI is going. But for now, AI cannot replace this human to human conversation and the reading of human um, physical conversation, and just the intonation of our voices. There's so
Mm.
much power in that, and very few people are paying attention to it.
Yeah, because they're just going through I guess that, and this is the thing, they've probably gone through sales training, learnt the sales process, said, I've got to go through the discovery phase, then I've got to go to proposal phase, I've got to overcome objections, then I've got to go close, and they're not paying attention to that. And it's when you recognize that we're dealing with human beings and human
Mhm.
beings have their own stuff going on, we have to be paying attention to the slightest change. So even the way somebody says yes can
Yes.
be yes, it could be yes, it could be yes. All different terminologies or different definitions from the same word. We've got to be able to pay attention to that. And that's
Absolutely.
where feedback becomes incredibly important. So from that, because there'll be people listening to this that say, well, I've got a sales team and a lot of their calls are face to face, right? Are you saying I've got to get them to record their calls, or is most of your calls that you're reviewing going to be things like via Zoom, via Teams, audio calls? How does it typically work? Because there might be people out there that are looking for excuses not to not to record their
Absolutely.
calls.
Well, I have an answer for all of it. So while a face to face is a little more difficult, you have to be a little more covert with it. but typically it's no more than turning on an Otter app on your app, laying your phone on the table upside down and going for it.
Yeah.
We don't need quality Dolby audio here. We just need to know what each person said. We need to understand where you went in the conversation. Even if I don't hear them, sometimes it's hard, inaudible because the phone is sitting far enough away from the other person. I can't hear it well.
Yeah.
I can tell where my client is going in the conversation by the level of questions they're asking.
Yeah.
And if I don't hear the follow-ups and the tell me mores and that's interesting, I'm not sure I understand, can you help clarify? Like really not taking responses at face value is another big pit of despair when it comes to winning deals, because clients will give you an answer. And if we think that's good enough and we don't probe or we don't press it and we don't test it,
Yeah.
they lie all the time. They don't
Oh, of
mean to.
course.
It's not intentional. But prospects lie. They've
Yeah.
got a buyer defense that's somewhat somewhere between here and here. And if you haven't broken through that yet, they're going to give you answers that are pat, generic answers. And if you think that's the final answer, you're dead. So when I hear even one side of the conversation, hopefully my client side, I can tell whether they're in it to win it with the deeper probing questions or not. So,
Yeah.
but when you're face to face, turn on your voice recorder, turn on Otter so you've got a transcript. The other really amazing power of transcribing and recording your calls beyond feedback is being able, when you're in it, you're not always listening as deeply as you can. You've got a lot going on, right? But when you're able to look at the transcript and when you go to write your proposal, you can recount things in their own words. Clients love that because they feel heard. They feel like you really have invested in them, that you were fully present. So the transcript is twofold. And then, of course, the recording is looking at game tape. I would say, though, at least 70 to 80% of my call debriefs and my call coaching is really around the electronic version. So it's either a Zoom recording, but this is another objection I get often from my clients, but they didn't want to record. So I asked them to record, or they saw the recording on and they asked me to turn it off. Great. Put on your Otter, put it by your speaker of your phone and record it. We'll delete it as soon as we're done with it. There's no proprietary information. You're under NDA with me. Nothing's going to sneak out, but that's not an excuse either. So now companies who are dedicated to this have Dialpad and other types of software. Gong is another one. There's all sorts of softwares that will actually do some of this for you. But at the end of the day, the call debriefing that between manager or sales manager and rep or a coach like myself and the client, being able to pick up on the nuances and explain why this was better than this or why this should be this way is really where rubber hits the road. I usually work with my clients 3 to 6 months and they're good. I mean, this is not a long-term thing. Once you get the rhythm and the flow of the call and you start to press yourself on some of those, I don't know about you in your sales career, if you've ever run into the ROI conversation being the one thing that gets left out almost always. How much is it worth to you if you don't do anything or if you fix it, and what's the investment you're willing to make? If we can't get those things from our prospect, again, we're shooting blind when we come in with a proposal.
Totally.
And then we get budget objections and blah, blah, blah. So I'm always after my clients to say, you've got to get the money conversation worked into this first discovery, even if it's within ranges or articulating and calculating the cost of the problem. If you can get those two things talked about, you have something to anchor to. So that's always what I'm listening to in these calls. And, software doesn't do that. Software doesn't necessarily pick those things up. So,
and part of that also, with the money one, you've also got to think about the time one as well, because there's a lot of organizations out there that are just doing some investigative work, some tie kicking, in other words. And from a salesperson's point of view, you've got to ask the question, hey, Theresa, is this a now thing? Is this a midterm or is this a long-term thing, right? So where are you at in your, I guess, your buying psychology, so I know how to frame the conversation? Because there's no point me providing you with a full-blown proposal if you're just thinking about something that might happen in the next 2 years. If this is something right now, then it's a lot more relevant to us both, which is cool. So as we sort of bring this into a close, you've also got a CARE framework, CARE conversation framework that you talk about, and you've probably already touched on a little bit of this, but is this an acronym that you use, or is it?
Of course, it's an acronym. That way it's easier to remember. So again, going back to the serve and solve, we're softening this up so it doesn't feel like hard sales, slimy, ooey gooey, right? If we're serving and solving, it means we also care. So this is the rhythm of the sales conversation. So C is the context of your client, of your prospect situation. What's the circumstance or the context in which you are coming into this conversation? In other words, why are we here?
Yeah.
What's going on? What's the situation?
Yeah.
The A is the analysis of that situation. What's the problems? What's working? What's not working? Where's the gaps? Where do they see the gaps? Not where we're seeing the gaps, where they see the gaps. And then, of course, what's the risk? If you continue on this road and this situation that you're telling me about exists for some amount of time, what's the risk? What's the ramifications? What's going on? That's the R in CARE. And then the E is let's explore options. What do we want to do from here? It's a very collaborative conversation. So we're co-creating the solution as we talk. And we're just saying, hey, well, this is the situation. This is the problem or the pains or however you want to refer to them. Is it urgent enough to fix right now? Yeah. Okay, great. Then if we don't fix it, what's the urgency? Why now? Why is this an initiative now? Great. Let's explore some options, shall we? Very easy, very, very comfortable. No pushing anything down anybody's throat or convincing them of anything.
Yeah.
If they don't have a problem and they don't see any risk, there's no sense in exploring anything.
No.
So if you have their best interest at heart,
Yeah.
your best interest will be served always.
Yeah, and the key thing there, and I love that framework: context, analysis, ramifications, and explore. It means that you're not having to take this beautiful iPhone and shove it down their throat, because they actually, through that discovery process, you might actually find they love Samsung.
That's right.
So stop right there.
That's
Stop
right.
right there. But it doesn't mean.
But tell me why you like Samsung.
That's it. What is it
Right?
about
Why do you
Samsung
like
to love? Yeah.
What does that provide you? What extras do you get for have you ever tried an iPhone?
Yeah.
We're not dead in the water yet just because
No.
they're not on board. We just have to ask the right questions and
No.
ask the whys. And I I don't know where it came from. It's been with me. I am insatiably curious. I'm like a 2-year-old.
Mm.
And even in my private conversations when I'm with friends, they'll say something and I'm asking, "Why?" "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, what is it? What does this mean?" Well, and I am the woman of 20 questions because if you're so mad at me, you're like, "God, Theresa, will you just stop?"
Well, I'm
So
sure it's not the Spanish Inquisition. I'm sure it's coming from a servant's heart.
it is because I am really genuinely curious
Yeah.
because I'm always wondering how things are working, right?
Yeah.
If you can put on your 2-year-old curiosity, you'll always win with these conversations. You might not win the business, but you'll win the relationship and you'll win the ability to allow your prospect to be heard, seen, and understood.
And I think that's a really, really good point for all salespeople, whether they're in big business or a solopreneur, to understand that it's actually not about you. It's about how you can relate to another person. And if you are genuinely interested in that other person, and it has to be genuine. It's not,
Yes.
I'm gonna fake some interest so I can get what I want from you. It has to be genuine, because people, certainly in Australia, and I'll say this, people's bullshit meters are pretty good. And I'm sure they're the same in the US, right?
Yes.
You've got to be
They're getting
genuine
better.
about this. Yeah. So if you do that well, and I think this is a key principle to sort of wrap this up, if you can do that really well, you may not necessarily get the sale in the first instance, but I guarantee what you'll do is you'll leave an impression with that person that you're a person of good reputation and integrity, that when they are ready to do something, you're the first person they're going to be thinking about.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. That top of mind awareness and this is where a pipeline makes you brave. So if you are filling your pipeline with and you're doing the work on the front end and you're getting enough people to have conversations, the one you have in front of you right now, you don't have to white knuckle. You can
Yeah.
let them go for a little bit, throw them
Yeah.
back, let them grow a little bit, come back in a couple of months, pick
Mm.
them up with a different bait. Like, it's a fishing expedition. I have all sorts of metaphors. But it's like a fishing that, it's a fishing expedition where you get them and they're just a little bit too small yet. They're not ready. Throw them back. They're still in the pond. They
Yeah.
haven't died.
Yeah.
So go back and get them. And I think allowing yourself to let go. I have a new phrase that I used with a client the other day. I said, be open to the close, not attached to it.
Yeah.
So don't be pessimistic. Don't think it's not going to happen because that's counterintuitive to
Mm.
success.
Mm.
However, don't hang on to it so tightly that it has to happen. just be open to it happening, usher it across the finish line with grace and gratitude and allow it to happen, but don't attach to it that somehow this is the one that's going to make or break me. Because if you have a full pipeline, you can be brave and let it
Oh,
go.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it reminds me, I read a book last week, actually, they were talking about this concept that in order to break through to a whole new area, and that could be personally or professionally, you've got to be willing to also be prepared to go to the other end of the spectrum, and that is potentially lose everything, right? So not attaching yourself to have to get this outcome, but be prepared to have nothing, often releases you from any internal pressure, which, by the way, plays out in the external environment, because people can detect, well, this person is desperate, therefore they need this, therefore all the barriers are going to go up. When that's not there, all of a sudden there's better flow and things start to happen. So
that's right.
hey,
Commission breath is
absolutely.
dangerous.
Yeah, brilliant. Theresa, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for sharing so much gold on this. For people that are listening that want to know more about you, connect with you and what you do, where's the best place for them to connect?
The first place would be LinkedIn. It's TJ Selling Coach on LinkedIn. And then, of course, I would love to offer up my CARE Conversational Framework guide that can be found at sellingsuccesssuite.com/care. And of course, that's .com. So sellingsuccesssuite.com/care. And they can download the guide and use that as a framework. And of course, contact me if you have any questions at all. DM me, shoot me a quick message. If there's quick questions that you have, send me your burning question. I'm happy to weigh in on it. If you have a scenario that you're looking at, let me know. I'm happy to help in any way that I can, because I serve and I solve in my own business as well.
And you care.
I do care a lot.
Theresa, thank you so much for being a guest on the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. It's been wonderful speaking with you.
Ditto. Thank you so much, Darren. It's been a great opportunity.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.